With the recent Don't Starve Together updates, more and more lore seems to be showing itself, and the ancient Fuelweaver was the last straw for me. I've been throwing theories left and right on the forums, but I decided I would do a video on it. By no means is everything stated going to be factual, so take it all with a grain of salt. Now before we can get to the juicy bits, we need to talk a bit about the ancients. For those who don't know, these were the inhabitants of the ruins. So what do we know about the ancients? Not much, actually. We know that they were in fact ancient, based on Maxwell's quote, "They were all dead when I got here." Since Maxwell is the earliest link to the Don't Starve world, having once ruled over it upon the Nightmare Throne, it makes things a bit difficult, since all we have to work with are the remains of this civilization. It isn't all bad though, as some of what's left is actually quite informative, starting with Thulecite. Thulecite is a bit of an enigma. Luckily, Wickerbottom gives us somewhat of a place to start. This seems to be an interesting ectoplasmic residue-bearing variety of zyosite. Not knowing what zyosite is, I of course looked it up, and my results came up with zoisite. I don't know if this is a potato-potato thing, but zoisite is a mineral, which isn't very outstanding until I stumbled upon a particular type, thulite. Seems a bit coincidental if you ask me. Put the prefix thul with the suffix site, and bingo, we get thulecite. We are, however, leaving out a critical detail, the ectoplasmic part. When you hear the word ectoplasm, you might think ghosts or spirits, or perhaps you think of the biological definition, which basically means the outer layer of cytoplasm in cells. This is probably what our librarian was referring to, but it's the supernatural one that interests us. This is due to the ancient statues. These things are real works of nightmares, coming in two distinct flavors, not including a more recent inclusion. The two being Mage and Head. Aren't those just lovely names? Well, it gets worse. Unlike the quotes for thulecite, which tend to just refer to it as a rare, fancy, or strong material, the statues have something a bit different. The characters use words like throbbing and aura, and phrases like aligned to the world. Strangely enough, Wickerbottom and Wilson's quotes almost seem to go against one another. One states, "This seems mystically aligned to the world," and the other, "It seems to throb out of tune with the world." Two separate observations of the same thing. This isn't just a one-time thing, either. In fact, another instance of seemingly opposite observations is present with nightmare fuel. Weber states it's cold and slippery. Willow, on the other hand, seems to disagree by saying, "Ew, it's still warm." The fact that this sort of opposition shows up with nightmare fuel is a big red flag, because guess who loves their nightmare fuel? You guessed it, the ancients. The overuse of fuel was their downfall, as Maxwell put it. So, how does this relate to the statues? Well, if you didn't know, the statues have a small habit of changing pose according to the nightmare cycle, taking on horrific expressions as nightmare fuel flows down from their orifices on their face and pools down at their feet. This includes the previously unmentioned third statue, quote-unquote, found within the Atrium, which follows this exact same pattern. The only thing that makes it stand out from the rest is the composition of the statue. It appears to be made out of a strange, almost organic-looking material. In fact, a few of our beloved heroes have some interesting things to say about it. Willow, with eerily lifelike, Maxwell with there's a dreamlike quality to the material, but most shocking of all is how bluntly Wendy puts it, a tortured soul. Look at the phrasing here. She doesn't say it looks like or resembles a tortured soul, she doesn't even bring up the word statue. In casual Wendy way, she simply calls it a tortured soul. Do you still think these are statues? The Atrium holds a lot more than just creepy statues. In fact, it dumps a ton of information on the player, and it does this through the murals. Different characters will interpret it a little different than one another, but overall it's the same. The first part goes on to describe people as gross, hungry, sad, weak, and inferior. More interestingly, it's a picture of some bug people, as said by Weber, or an ancient mural of non-mammalian civilization, as said by Wickerbottom. These people, while still people, are not human. Maxwell also has something unique to say. A picture of the city before the fuel. This ancient civilization before the fuel had bug people. The second panel, in one way or another, is missing. Lost to time, no painting, all messed up. You get the point. Of course, our knowledgeable friend Maxwell here knows exactly what's going on. We all know what happened next. Oh, okay. Sure, fine, be like that. Of course we know. We were probably all stuck on a throne of shadow at one point, am I right? Anyway, the third part uses words like darkness, evil, black goop, shadow, substance, ink, muck, and oil. In most instances, describing it over the people. The things get really spooky in the fourth part. The ancients undergo a transformation, described as rebirth, escaping their bug outsides, molting from their exoskeletons, losing their skin, but most critical of all, monsters is bursting out of them. A statement by our pal Wolfgang. Then, it simply goes on to explain how nice a place the city became. Unless you're Maxwell. And then you get to have cool monologues. I know why you led me back here, but it won't work. Remember that. We'll come back to it in a bit. Stepping back a bit, let's talk about our statues again. You looking at them any different yet? You should be. Take a close look at the Atrium Statue. It kind of looks like a person, doesn't it? But not quite, because it almost looks, oh, I don't know, bug-like? No worries if you're not following. I'm saying these aren't statues. These are the ancients, or at least at one point were. Maybe you're still not sold yet, but I'm not done. Look closer at the Atrium Statue. During a nightmare phase, it holds up its hands. But did you catch this detail? It has a mouth. A large, gaping mouth. Pair that large mouth with the spines on its back, and it almost looks identical to a terrorbeak. This isn't as absurd as you might think. We've actually seen the molting of skin and monsters bursting out before. Where? With the marble chess pieces. They might not be organic, but the connection is there. There is one last thing to mention about the statues, though. While unbreakable in the game, the files reveal something quite shocking. I know I won't look at Thulecite the same way. Wow, we're finally going to talk about the Fuelweaver. Resurrecting the odd skeleton on the surface at night results in a walking shadow skeleton covered in moss that does little to nothing. On occasion, it'll fall apart or be seen grasping at its head in what looks like pain. Resurrecting the fossils in the cave will result in a less friendly version that appears almost melted with its horns bent down. It even shows some promise of communication, if only in shattered bits. Finally, by resurrecting the remains in the center of the atrium with an activated gateway, you're greeted with the Fuelweaver. This is what appears to be its true form, with a fully realized mind capable of speech. It's the things it says that are so interesting. Some of my personal favorites would be, "My world, threadbare. This world's fabric is frayed and torn." After reading through their dialogue, it was these two that caught my attention. In fact, it was what instilled me to make this video. This could easily be a misinterpretation, but the phrasing here is strange. One, while in the attacking state, "my world." The other, while attacking a player, "this world." Is this just how they're phrasing it when they're talking to someone compared to when they're talking to themselves? Or are they not from this world? I might be looking too much into it, but that could be an important detail. To counter this is another quote, "My city in tatters." It is likely the city is the ruins. So it is possible by saying this world was simply referring to their knowledge of other worlds. That detail aside, there are more quotes to discuss. They are coming. It cannot be stopped. The word "they" is used a lot in Don't Starve. They are the main antagonists, and had previously been believed to be the shadow monsters. As we discussed, however, it appears the ancients could be the shadow monsters, and so for the sake of the discussion, we will assume this to be true. Meaning, they are not the shadow monsters. which isn't too much of a stretch because the shadow monsters are already present in the Don't Starve world. Only when insane maybe, but they're still present. Unless we want to go with a whole, this world is dimensionally weak, allowing for them to take some tangible form, but not fully or something. But, I mean, that's possible. But that's a bit too grabby at straws for now. Moving on, we have the quote, "Lend me your power one last time." The lending your power part is interesting, as we don't know who is giving this power. Most likely whoever's on the other side of the gateway, but that's not what interests me. What's interesting about this is the one last time. Why? Well, we just brought this thing back to life. If it plans on killing us, as it does, then afterward, why would it be the last time? The answer comes in death. After dying to the Fuelweaver, we will see it move up to the portal and do what appears to be deactivating it? Throughout the fight, they mention saving the player. Is this it? Is whatever alternative worse than death? There's no telling, but the lines that come with the deactivation are also interesting. But before that, let's take a look at some other quotes when examining the Atrium. "It beats with the sorrow to span the skies and plumb the darkest seas. A pulse of malice and betrayal beats within." And when examining the Fuelweaver, "Do you mourn too?" I bring this up because the Fuelweaver's lines indicate these mentioned emotions. "Curse their name. I was wrong. Return them to me." Why? The capitalization of "their" is key. This is the way of distinguishing that it isn't just some random they, but rather them, the center of everything. Given that it appears they are the source or givers of the ruin's energy and nightmare fuel, it seems that this power wasn't all that the ancients had hoped for, or perhaps backfired. Or maybe not even just the ancients, maybe it was just the Fuelweaver. Maybe this is why Maxwell describes the betrayal in the heart of the Atrium. Then, there's also this one particular line when the Fuelweaver interacts with the gate. Metheus. Similar to Prometheus, maybe? No, not the movie. The Greek Titan, who was known for stealing fire from Olympus and giving it to mankind. Or in this instance, taking the power of nightmare fuel and giving it to the ancients? It could be. It does fit, but nothing's for sure. Then there's the death animation. Thorny vines come up and capsize the Fuelweaver into the thurible, leaving behind a rose. Charlie readings are off the chart. The Fuelweaver even states, "You are not them," before speaking their last. Other lines include taunting the player for making the wrong choice or being so easily deceived. Remember the quotes from Maxwell I told you to remember? Charlie brings the player here to activate the gate. The Fuelweaver does everything in their power to stop you, and by doing so, even ending their own life, or whatever it is they had. So where do you stand? Do you believe the Fuelweaver to be speaking the truth? Or do you believe Charlie might actually be trying to help?